Hi, I would like to share with you some information about ecological pyramids. We've been talking about food chains and food webs, and I just want to show you how energy is passed through the food chains and the food webs. So, over here on this side, we know we have the producers at the bottom of the food web, and then primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, which would probably include the apex predators at that level. But if you look at the energy on the side of the ecological pyramid, you start with 100% energy that you get from the producers. And then by the time it passes from the producers, the grass and the trees, the bark, possibly bacteria. So by the time that 100% of energy passes from these producers to the primary consumers, which are in this case, the herbivores, it goes from 100% down to 10%. So 90% of that energy is lost, probably lost in the form of heat. And so only 10% of that energy is actually left for the herbivores to use. When the herbivores get eaten by the primary carnivores, which are the secondary consumers, only 10% of that energy is transferred up to the primary carnivores. And the rest, again, is lost in the body heat of the animals. And then finally, we know that by the time the primary carnivores are eaten by the apex predators, only 0.1% of the original 100% of energy is passed on. And that's the way the energy passes through the food web. So it's important that we keep in mind we need to have lots and lots of energy from the producers to be able to, give us enough energy to survive as apex predators. So moving on, the energy pyramid shows the amount of energy that's available at each trophic level, like I mentioned, and most of that energy is it's used for life processes like growth, photosynthesis, cellular respiration, metabolism, and heat. And then you know that the rule of 10 is something that can help you remember how much energy is passed on from one level of the pyramid on to the next level. So the biomass pyramid, that represents the amount of organic material at each level. So again, as it goes up, it's going up by 10% each level. So over here we have our energy pyramid. Producers have 100%, and then the energy of the first order consumers is down to 10%, 1%, and 0.1%. And the same thing is true over here for the amount of biomass. And what that means, see if I can move myself out of the way. What that means is that it's the amount of like physical material. So you have 100% of the physical material down on the producer level, and then it gets smaller and smaller as you go up toward the apex predator. And that's the way that mass is flowing through the food web. So here we have, this is a biomass and energy pyramid put together where you have 1,000 kilocalories. That's the amount of energy produced by the producers in this particular biomass pyramid. Then you have the primary consumers at 100, secondary at 10, tertiary at 1, and it could even go higher. And if something eats the owl like a human, then we would have 0.1%. So that shows you how they all fit together. So both the amount of tissue and the energy decreases as you go up. The other thing I wanted to mention today is biomagnification. And this is the only case in which it actually begins to go in the opposite direction. So if you have, in this particular food web, DDT, which is a terrible poison, it's produced for like pesticides, and we've used it for a long time, and now we know that it's very poisonous, so they don't use it anymore. But let's say we have DDT in the water. Our producers are all getting just a little tiny bit of that DDT, 0.000003 parts per million. And then the fish, they start eating that plankton, and they get 0.04 parts per million, so it's more than 0.5 in the bigger fish. The largest fish gets 2 parts per million, and then by the time it gets to the apex predator, it's 25 parts per million because they're eating all of these. All that poison is being transferred up from one organism to the next, to the next, to the next. So you end up with an increase of DDT up to 10 million times. So this poor bird is poisoned with the DDT. Same thing happens with heavy metals like mercury that are in water, or other kinds of chemicals that we produce like PCBs or plastics and things like that. So this is called biomagnification, and it's not something that we like. We want to be able to have a clean environment. This is another reason why we want to be able to use materials that are not going to be so toxic to the environment. So that's our lesson for today. We're going to play a game. So if you're on quarantine, I would go back over these slides a couple of times since you don't get to play the game, and that will be all you have to do for today. Okay, thanks. Have a great day. Bye.